previously. Chaos we don't need. Friction, I'll leave it 0 for now, and I'll just play that. Okay, you can see they come down and they strike the surface and they slide along it, which is pretty much what you'd expect. If I use a friction value of 10, you'll see, well, you can't really see it there. Let's try something a little bit more drastic. Okay, 30%. Okay, let's try a little bit higher. Okay, actually I think I know what's happening here. The friction's not actually having any effect because the initial collision is, I think, causing the particles to not bounce, but then again to then not collide with the surface anymore. They're actually moving parallel with the surface, but they're not actually in collision anymore. So what I'll actually have to do to get that to have a proper effect is to put some gravity into our scene, I think. And the gravity will pull the particles down and cause them to collide with the floor on more than one occasion, and this should hopefully have the additive effect of the friction actually slowing our particles down. So there we go. I've actually got the force space warp in there. I'll just grab this force here. I'm putting the force before the collision. That means that the force is applied before the collision, and this is very important in collisions. Always put any forces before collision, because otherwise what can happen is the collision can be detected by the collision test, and then the force comes along afterwards and affects the particle and pushes the particle through the space warp. And that's a very bad thing, because basically your particles will collide, then move through the collision surface and then carry on traveling. So effectively you've broken your collision detection. So always put your forces before. I'll just add this force in. Check out what the simulation's like. Let's see if it's what we kind of expect. As per usual, the gravity is very strong, so I'll just put it down to 0.1. That's a little bit better. And now I'll actually change this angle a bit more, because now the gravity is actually going to have quite a big effect on the motion of the particles. Move it up here a little bit. There we go. Press play. Okay, and there you see they're sliding along the surface. And you can see now the friction is actually having an effect. The particles are stuck to the surface because obviously I've used a friction of 100%. If I put it down to something a little bit lower, there you go, you can see the particles. Actually, I think I know why it's doing that. It's because we have gravity here, but after the collision they're actually sent to a new event. So to get rid of that, we'll just get rid of this wire. If I press play, you can see now the particles actually come to a stop the way you would expect them to. So that's an example of a little mistake that I actually made, but it does actually illustrate a point, and that is, if you have a collision, you've got to remember to actually replicate the setup that you actually have in an event in any other events that the particles go to. So if you want to have gravity in here, make sure either you have a gravity copied from here and put in this event as well, or that you put the gravity into the global event up here. So for instance, if I put gravity up here, it gets applied to everything globally. Now I can actually have the particles sent onto the next event where they will be affected by gravity. But if I actually play that now, you'll see what will happen. They'll initially collide with the floor, and then they'll fall through the floor. Well, that makes perfect sense, because in this event there's a collision test, but in the next event here there isn't. So again, what we could actually do is we could just select, hold on shift, click on our, just copy it here. Sometimes the particle view seems to have problems with copying tests, but you can just copy it into empty space and then drag it in there then. There we go. And I'll just get rid of that empty event. And now you can see you've actually got your force being applied to your particles globally. You can see you've got a collision here, and you can see you've got a collision here. And now that will actually make our particles change when they strike the floor. When they get to the sent to the next event, they'll have the same collisions taking place. Actually, I think what's happening here is that this force is being applied after these collisions, which is actually not such a good thing. So actually what I'll do is I'll put this back here, and I'll actually just manually copy it in there. There we go. Put that before. Okay, so now we've got the same system going on. So particles come down, collide.